Welcome to the Tim Booker channel, where wisdom is worth spreading. Wishing you an enjoyable listening experience. Today, I bring to you The Org. It was selected for the Financial Times annual business book list. Set aside recommendations from distinguished scholars such as Nobel laureate Norbel, Michael Spence, and others. Purely in terms of reading experience, this is a book that can resonate with countless working individuals. Moreover, I believe that those who have rich experiences and career advancements in the workplace will have a deeper appreciation for this book. The reason for this assertion is the profound depth of observation presented by the author in this book, offering insights into various organizational forms within workplace culture. Whether you're a sole proprietor, a part-time employee, a seasoned office veteran, or a mid to senior level manager in a large corporate group, there are moments while reading when a subtle smile might appear on your lips as you resonate with the content. Perhaps, from your very first day in the workforce, you realize that organizations are not what you idealize them to be. Endless meetings, endless reports, endless forms to fill, a culture of bickering, these turn the organization into an efficiency black hole. Not to mention, you'll always encounter some work performance artists around you, adept at looking experienced and competent without actually doing much. Why do organizations established to fulfill tasks become sanctuaries for slacking? And why do some managers who don't do real work still earn high salaries? Many of these workplace perplexities are positively addressed in this book. For every individual consumed, infuriated, or worn down by the workplace, the sharp interpretation of organizational rules in this book will provide a sense of clarity. To the extent that the candidness of the author, Ray Fissman, will make you realize that regardless of Western or Eastern background, for-profit or non-profit endeavors, the logic of organizations and the humanity in workplaces are universally connected. The concept of organization is worth understanding. As the book opens, it mentions that for a working individual, more than a third of the day is spent at work, longer than the time spent with family. Organization is a concept rich in meaning. Over a lifetime, how do we make choices here? Yet few have truly contemplated the logic of organization's existence. In today's analysis, you'll gain at least 3 cognitive insights. First, shatter the overly high expectations of organizations, understand that they are not perfect and not entirely scientific. Second, even though organizations might disappoint, when we continue to believe, in many cases, they offer the best solutions in the balance of pros and cons. Third, grasp that organizations always involve trade-offs, perhaps you can face gains and losses more calmly and find breakthroughs within them. This book isn't an easy read, possessing noticeable academic depth. Fortunately, it's closely aligned with our workplace experiences, allowing you to swiftly appreciate its engaging aspects. The fusion of seriousness and entertainment, skillful use of storytelling, and the avoidance of didacticism are the writing styles of the book's co-authors, Ray Fissman and Tim Sullivan. Fissman hails from academia, a behavioral economics professor at Boston University, holding a Ph.D. in economics from Harvard University. Sullivan, an executive editor for Harvard Business Review Press, has been involved in planning several successful academic economics books. Their collaboration on another book, The Org, is equally enlightening in explaining microeconomics. Interested friends can certainly take a look. Now, let's delve into the specifics of the book, The Org, and its content. The book consists of 9 sections, covering history and theory, including the origin and evolution of organizations, management and innovation, organizational culture, and change. I'll guide you through 3 questions to prompt your thinking alongside the author's exploration. 1. Why do organizations exist? 2. How do organizations operate? 3. Why do CEOs earn high salaries merely by attending meetings? Through these 3 questions, you'll catch a glimpse of the book's essence. Sure, let's start by discussing why organizations exist. This is the first question the author attempts to answer in the opening. Firstly, what is an organization? The answer provided in the book is that an organization is a machine built to accomplish tasks. This is not difficult to understand. Organizations are not just a human invention. Other organisms also organize themselves through certain mechanisms to accomplish tasks that individuals alone cannot achieve. My personal understanding is that an organization is like weaving. Think about it, does weaving not involve threading one strand over and under another? We can consider the vertical threads as hierarchy and the horizontal threads as processes, overlapping to create a structure. Eventually, the woven whole represents the form of an organization. Every individual in the workplace is situated within this intricate structure of vertical and horizontal threads. Must individuals belong to organizations? For older generations, being a part of an organization is a given. If not part of an organization, would one become a sole proprietor? Interestingly, this book starts with the perspective of sole proprietors. To use more contemporary terms, it's about individual studios or freelancers. An example in the book is a craftsman named Urban, who is representative of artisanal organizations. Urban is his own entity, employing himself. He is both his own boss and his own employee. He crafts wooden eyeglass frames in his workshop, creating products that resemble works of art. His annual production is just about 10 pairs. Despite the premium price of Urban's eyeglass frames, which leaves ordinary people astonished, his finances show that after deducting material and miscellaneous expenses, he barely manages to make ends meet for the year. Fans who admire his handcrafted works actually form long queues. But why doesn't Urban evolve into a larger-scale organization and introduce a production line? With expansion would come departments like logistics and marketing that Urban isn't well versed in, along with a substantial amount of management work that he had initially hoped to avoid. Urban was once a regular employee himself, and the idea of a larger organization frightens him. He'd rather immerse himself in the simplicity of a small organization and the freedom of creativity. In Urban's case, the personal artistic utopia he constructed sacrifices the potential for greater efficiency and is far from perfect. Next, I want to introduce you to the name of the second individual in the book, Samata. So, who is Samata? He is a factory owner in the Indian cotton industry, and Samata can also be seen as a representative of traditional production methods. In the context of the book, Samata means Mr. Efficiency in the Indian language. This Mr. Efficiency is hands-on in all aspects and follows a management style that involves constant movement. A typical scene is him wearing the warehouse keys around his neck, tirelessly patrolling the factory to ensure that yarn or finished products don't find their way into employees' pockets. With such an old-fashioned approach, his factory stands out as a top player in local management and operations. He should be the cotton mill king. However, it's his competitors who have opened more factories and sold more fabric. You might wonder why Samata doesn't expand his operations. He'd explain with a melancholic expression that he has no sons or brothers. Oh, Samata believes that expanding a business requires replicating someone as efficient as himself in the role of overseer. Sons and brothers are, in his view, the only trustworthy agents. In a family business, sons have inheritance rights and brothers can share in the ownership. Everyone's interests align, and even if conflicts arise, they're resolved within the family. Samata's situation of being a solitary operator is not unfamiliar to us. The novelty this book brings is the mention of a management experiment. This experiment involved the World Bank funding the deployment of experts from the renowned consulting company Accenture into Indian textile factories as samples. The objective was to test whether management truly benefits businesses and whether conventional business administration is worth the investment. Before the consultants arrived, these factories were largely in chaos. Inventory was getting damp and spoiled in warehouses, old machines and discarded tools were strewn about. The Accenture consultants restructured these factories with modern management practices, bringing order to systems and processes. The results of the experimental period were impressive. Each factory's annual profits increased by over $200,000 on average. Essentially, the profits earned in the first year covered the consulting fees of Accenture. These changes in the sampled factories lead to a key concept: professional managers. Eminent figures who study corporate history, like Chandler, have a classic work titled The Visible Hand. This serves as an extension of Adam Smith's concept of the invisible hand. Chandler's visible hand refers to the guiding force within organizations that allocate internal resources. It's the decisions made by professional managers. Chandler discovered that the rise of large-scale modern enterprises was intertwined with the essential role of management layers. Businesses relied on them to coordinate increasingly complex commercial systems. While the effectiveness of management today might be a common puzzle, during specific historical periods, groups of professional managers propelled America's management revolution, leading to the so-called American Century. Just as Accenture's management consultants entered the Indian factories, guiding the world on how to quantify, organize, and standardize, professional managers were at the helm. Samada, Mr. Efficiency, lacks a hierarchical organization and an effective management system, forcing him to wear the warehouse keys around his neck. The fundamental role of managers is to act as a hub for information processing, extending the control of business owners. From an organizational perspective, lacking these information flows would lead us back to Samada's world, or even Urban's artisanal organization. Alright, moving on, let me introduce you to the third name. This name is quite familiar to you, it's HP, which stands for Hewlett-Packard. The founders of HP, Hewlett and Packard, were initially like Urban, operating as individual proprietors who were involved in every aspect of their business. However, unlike Urban, when their first successful product, an electronic test instrument, experienced a surge in demand, they began to hire employees. From its inception in a garage in the 1930s to its development as the 11th largest American enterprise with over 300,000 employees by 2011, HP's growth is evident. Although the founders often emphasized the HP way, aiming to maintain the intimate and humane nature of their garage startup, managing such a vast HP empire necessitated a culture driven by objectives and profits. While the founders often spoke of the HP way, in reality, to manage the vast HP empire, the company had to adopt a culture focused on goals and profits. HP's Wall Street investors welcomed this change, and subsequent CEOs of HP were not hesitant to implement significant layoffs during restructuring. However, it's worth noting that more than one HP CEO has been dismissed due to unclear financials or strategic mistakes. As organizations expand, problems arise. If building an enterprise empire is not a rustic, wood-chopping kind of entrepreneurial journey and sometimes even ends up with unsettling outcomes, why do people establish organizations in the first place? Many people naturally think organizations exist to accomplish more work, right? No, that's not entirely accurate. Often, as bureaucratic systems grow larger, they become increasingly challenging to eliminate. Imagine you're the boss. You need to handle research, production, and marketing. Instead of assembling a team yourself, why not outsource to third-party companies on the market? To answer these questions, let's briefly revisit economic theory. Adam Smith likened the price mechanism to an invisible hand, guiding each business to make decisions based on market conditions, thereby facilitating more efficient resource allocation. We're quite familiar with this concept. When something is in high demand in the market, producing it becomes more profitable, leading more businesses to enter the race until the market becomes saturated and profits decline. Then, businesses disperse and explore other potentially profitable ventures. The market supply and demand relationship model is well understood by academia, but classical economists skip over how production is organized within enterprises. In their models, businesses are treated as black boxes, inputs of raw materials and labor result in outputs of products. Perhaps in comparison to the complexity of the market, people believe that internal organizational processes are much simpler. After all, employees work a certain number of hours and receive predetermined salaries. However, a young man named Ronald Coase attempted to open the black box of how businesses operate internally. Coase's groundbreaking discovery earned him the title of the founder of New Institutional Economics. He revealed that both businesses and markets are ways of dividing labor and allocating resources in society. In simple terms, it's about deciding what tasks should remain within the business and which can be outsourced to the market. The fundamental principle is to choose the cheaper option. For instance, if producing steel internally is cheaper than purchasing it from the market, Ford Motor Company would consider establishing its own iron mine. If Urban's eyeglass business found it more cost-effective to manufacture lenses rather than ordering them from intermediaries, he'd look upstream in the supply chain. However, deciding which option is cheaper involves weighing pros and cons, and it's much more challenging than we might imagine. Otherwise, Nobel Prize judges wouldn't have awarded the economics prize to Coase for his straightforward insight into the matter. Coase's most significant contribution is the concept of transaction costs. In market transactions, people invest unseen costs to eliminate information asymmetry, reach agreements, or establish trust. Coase referred to these as transaction costs. For example, in gangster movies, you often see an exchange where money is paid in one hand and goods are received in the other. In the real business world, even something as simple as a transaction contract could be a thick stack. Behind this could be the overtime work of corporate lawyers or legal advisors. Many times, the hidden costs of transactions can be so high that they make the boss break a sweat. Even in personal consumption, like buying a smartphone or a car, we spend additional time gathering information and doing research before making a purchase decision. In other words, the cost we pay is not just the purchase price of the product. Kosa's concept of transaction costs helps us understand why organizations exist and why businesses don't just buy everything from the open market. Businesses combine production factors into an internally decision-making unit, reducing transaction frictions and minimizing transaction costs. Understanding this, as companies expand, additional tasks initially remain within the organization. Until one day, when internal production costs surpass the costs of dealing with external suppliers, those tasks will move to the market. Returning to Urban's one-person organization, for him, the goal is to perfect his craftsmanship rather than achieve maximum efficiency. So, it's entirely suitable for him to continue operating within his own secluded space. For most of us in organizations, the current state of our organizations is the result of constant trade-offs. Next, let's delve into the second question: how organizations operate. Have you ever wondered about the connection between a police officer at a police station, a priest in Christianity, and a graduate of West Point Military Academy, all of them having roles quite distinct from the typical jobs most of us have? If you understand the logic that this book aims to convey, you'll find resonance with these seemingly unrelated roles. This is a significant portion of the book where the author breaks down the boundaries of organizational types, discussing these vastly different roles within a similar organizational logic. Let's start by looking at the story of the Baltimore Police Department and the Baltimore model. Police officers are tasked with maintaining public order and have numerous responsibilities. Thieves, burglars, robbers, murderers, drug offenders, and fraudsters are among the entities they need to address. The FBI categorizes criminal activities into violent crimes and property crimes, each category comprising dozens or even hundreds of offenses. Even police departments struggle to define the exact roles of their officers. Organizations often incentivize police officers based on their achievements to motivate them to uphold social order. However, this type of incentive naturally leads to certain behaviors. For example, if the threshold for conviction of theft is set at $1,000, thieves would quickly catch on. They would make sure their loot stays below the value of $999, making the police officers reluctant to bother with such cases. Determining the most appropriate bonus distribution within the police department is also a challenge since officers tend to pick the low-hanging fruit in terms of cases to solve. For instance, patrolling for parking violations is far easier than handling financial fraud cases, and arresting pickpockets is easier than tackling homicide cases. When officers are on duty at night, they'd rather catch a nap in their patrol cars than stay alert like a vigilant detective. Furthermore, deciding who should receive bonuses for solving a particular murder case, the detective, the investigator, or the forensic expert. The intricacies of managing a small police station can become astonishingly complex. The Baltimore Police Department simplifies the issue by focusing on a single primary performance metric, the arrest rate. Consequently, detectives in this system strive to maximize their arrest rate by pursuing the easiest cases. For instance, they might focus on arresting street beggars or traffic violators rather than fighting organized crime. Using such strategies, one police officer in Baltimore set a record by achieving an arrest rate of 26 individuals in a single month. His superior also appreciated this because the officer's success boosted the superior's reputation as an effective manager. According to the team leader, as long as the captain likes it, I'll give it my all. Why does the captain prefer high arrest rates? Because the chief of police prefers it. And so, the chain of command continues. This cycle can continue because the mayor can proudly proclaim that the data shows the city is working tirelessly to ensure safety. Police officers with high arrest rates receive positive reinforcement through bonuses and promotions, while the fiery and aggressive old officers who used to confront the criminal underworld become a nostalgic memory. Over time, Baltimore's police force may no longer produce exceptional officers, given this logic. If you follow this logic to its extreme, the Baltimore Police Department might even consider outsourcing arrest work to bounty hunters who aren't on a fixed salary. The author states that when the dreams of the most exceptional employees are shattered, you realize that the organization is indeed operating. This sense of resignation is something administrative staff in an office often experience as well. The underlying reason is that individuals in roles like police officers or administrative staff bear multiple responsibilities. Much of their work is difficult to measure, hard to reward, and often yields long-term results. They bear a certain qualitative weight in their responsibilities, unlike roles such as sales or customer service, which are more easily quantifiable. Now let's consider the example of the United Methodist Church. Like any organization, the United Methodist Church also seeks to motivate its clergy. Researchers have drawn parallels between the performance of pastors and that of other professions. If Goldman Sachs bankers' salaries are tied to the profits they generate for the company, why shouldn't missionaries receive bonuses for their successful evangelism efforts? The author describes how clergy members engage in complex soul-saving work, taking on multiple responsibilities such as preaching, visiting the lonely, and listening to confessions. They embody a combination of roles including public speakers, community workers, and psychological counselors. Two economists analyzed the incentive mechanisms for clergy members using statistical methods. The results indicated that clergy members also tend to invest more effort in tasks that are more likely to yield bonuses. For instance, they might focus on recruiting new believers, reducing the loss of congregants in their region, or even recruiting followers from other parishes. This behavior, called stealing sheep in church terms, aims to bolster their performance. The sensitivity of clergy members to performance-based salaries surprised these seasoned economists. Can we say that the essence of an organization lies in the design of incentives and the balancing of interests? For instance, if the Baltimore Police Department focuses on the arrest rate, police officers might prioritize making arrests rather than considering the bigger picture. If financial institutions encourage loan officers to grant loans, they often overlook the potential high default rates later on. In investment funds, project managers ponder how to secure approvals while risk management directors focus on potential risks. Every organization has attackers and defenders, similar to the gas pedal and brake existing simultaneously in a car. Economists refer to this as the difference between star tasks and monitoring tasks. In an organization where supervisors are too dominant, the resistance of bureaucratic layers can stifle innovation. However, allowing business stars to wield too much power can eventually expose the organization to significant risks. This leads us to the contradiction between organizational hierarchy and innovation. For star tasks, an organization needs bold individuals, such as those in research and development. One might be focused on creating innovative products, even if it means numerous failures along the way. Organizations don't want to see their R&D personnel hesitating or being overly cautious. Yet, in a scaled-up organization, hierarchy often hampers innovation. In such cases, many companies adopt a skunkworks approach. This model originated from Lockheed Martin, a well-known aerospace and defense company. A research team working on classified projects was situated in a distant tent away from the rest of the company's employees. Since the tent was located near a plastic factory emitting a foul odor, the project received the nickname skunkworks. On the other hand, in some situations, organizations demand compliance and members staying within certain frameworks. For example, consider the United States Military Academy at West Point. Incoming cadets must learn to follow orders. They are meticulously trained in every aspect to ensure uniformity. While cadets may find many rules frustratingly meaningless, officers know that absolute obedience and attention to detail can be life-saving in warfare. In vast corporate organizations, compliance can save costs and lead to higher standardization. Often, organizational culture plays a role in reinforcing consistency. The leadership qualities cultivated at West Point involve an ability to follow orders while motivating others. It involves staying within established frameworks while thinking outside the box. Building the right organization is not easy. How can you integrate various roles within a decentralized structure? How can you adjust each individual's behavior to contribute to the organization's goals? The cases of Procter & Gamble, McDonald's, Google, and others in the book underscore the difficulty organizations face in striking a balance between incentive mechanisms and employees' intrinsic identification and motivation. Regardless of the organization type, finding this balance is extremely challenging, yet it's also a necessary cost of constructing an organization. Lastly, let's take a closer look at the third question. Why do CEOs earn high salaries by merely attending meetings? The Chief Executive Officer, or CEO, is a position within a company that holds significant power and influence. However, outside of the corporate world, they might not be any more well-known than others. Yet, starting from the 1980s, legendary CEOs began to emerge, such as Gates, Welch, and Jobs, who displayed extraordinary personal charisma and gained idol-like admiration from the public. CEOs' salaries often amount to millions of dollars, and an increasing number of individuals earn billions. Faced with these astonishing figures, many people wonder what exactly these CEOs do and whether they deserve such compensation. Master of Associative Learning, Mintzberg, began studying CEOs half a century ago to unravel the mystery behind their world. Although decades have passed and today's CEOs have tools like email, chat applications, and video conferences at their disposal, their daily activities still largely resemble those from the past. Regardless of their industry or the scale of their company, they spend a considerable amount of their time in meetings. Describing Jobs' work as meetings is akin to saying Shakespeare's creativity is merely writing. During a 5-week observation period, researchers rarely noted a CEO being undisturbed for more than 15 minutes at a stretch. Any activity lasting over an hour typically involves a meeting, which often revolves around addressing recent issues or mediating disputes. Situations that require their involvement are often unexpected rather than pre-planned. Scientific management dictates that every part of an organization should act predictably, except for the CEO. While meetings might not always be efficient, they remain the most effective way to gather information about the organization's internal affairs. Most of the information CEOs acquire comes from conversations rather than the data stored in management information systems. Management expert Peter Drucker points out that CEOs serve as the bridge between the internal organization and the external society. As the top figure, they possess a relatively comprehensive view of the organization. While their overall perspective might not always be accurate, it's often the only one the organization receives. Lower-ranking members within the organization often resemble blind people feeling an elephant, while the CEO is the one-eyed individual. CEOs exhibit a wide range of personal styles. For instance, Jobs was known for his controlling nature, while IKEA's Kamprad was a cost-cutting strategist. These style differences significantly impact the organization's actions and even its profitability. The outcome of a single decision can result in a vast difference in a company's performance, which helps explain why CEOs often earn salaries in the millions. Are CEOs inherently smarter or better at meetings than the average person? Not necessarily, but it's definite that their compensation leverage is higher. Consider an extreme example: if you had a substantial amount of money and wanted to win big in a blackjack game, would you be willing to pay a professional player to make the bets for you instead of playing yourself? In smaller gambling scenarios, a slight advantage might lead to just a little more winnings. However, when significant bets are involved, a small margin can result in vastly different outcomes. Novices who lose more than they win are likely to run out of funds quickly. Therefore, you'd probably be willing to pay a professional player who has a better chance of winning, even if it costs you millions. Moreover, CEOs possess a resource that ordinary employees lack: an elite network. The book points out that most corporate boards include executives from other companies. The logic is clear: who could offer better judgments for a large company than someone who has previously managed one? CEOs form a small circle, protecting and supporting each other on the board in a gentlemanly manner. Proposals to raise CEO compensation due to competition among companies are often approved. In the market, companies also promise generous severance terms when hiring CEOs to attract suitable candidates. Some CEOs, even if dismissed, still receive a substantial amount of money as they leave. From exclusive private jets to protective clauses during severance, the organization's intent is to maximize profit for shareholders by having the best individuals in place. Although their performance might sometimes disappoint and even trigger anger from shareholders and investors, these are costs that organizations must contend with. Alright, the logic of this book about organizations comes to an end here. Let's summarize. After years of studying organizations, what conclusion does the author want to convey to us? In fact, the book is permeated with a concept, and that is balance. Organizations are filled with balance in every aspect. Take the example of the familiar office cubicle, for instance. Its half-real, half-virtual low walls strike a delicate balance between maintaining privacy and fostering openness. In comparison to earlier bullpen-style open offices, it doesn't just serve the purpose of accommodating more corporate employees and a silent majority, it adds a layer of humanity to adapt to the new democratic culture. And as Cosa's theory of transaction costs economics tells us, the organization's boundaries are also determined by trade-offs. Should tasks be accomplished by forming internal teams or by engaging the market? The basic principle is to compare the internal transaction costs of the organization with those of the external market, and choose the option with lower costs. From Eben's one-man operation to Sumata's family factory, and further to HP's modern corporate empire, the journey has shown us that various organizations are far from perfect. An unchangeable fact within organizations is that all forms of management and change come with costs. Idealists might overlook these costs, but unfortunately, reality doesn't operate that way. Management scholar Chris Bart even goes as far as saying that organizations suffocate amidst chaos. The author writes that organizations are not the problem, fundamentally, they are a solution, albeit a solution that generates real problems. To counteract the incongruities and functional dysfunctions of organizations, considerable effort is expended. Regardless of how ambitious the initial designs are, they may ultimately yield results akin to a buyer's market. Examples include the Baltimore Police's practice of focusing on minor infractions and neglecting more serious crimes, as well as the Church's preoccupation with refreshing performance rather than saving souls. Nevertheless, the impulse to create organizations represents the best of human nature, a group of like-minded individuals coming together to achieve a common goal. However, designing an organization is not an easy task. The likely outcome is a disparity between expectations and reality. For instance, members might find themselves overwhelmed by too many spreadsheets and a multitude of tasks that are difficult to assess and incentivize. Organizations require elaborate paperwork and hierarchical supervision to keep people in line. American companies may spend $1,000 in costs to establish multiple checkpoints just to validate a $20 invoice. Significant innovations sometimes need to be driven outside the organization, in the form of a skunkworks project. It's precisely due to these trade-offs and compromises that organizations take on the shape we see today. By looking at organizations from a different perspective, perhaps we can find solace for some of the frustrations stemming from these disparities. At the end of the book, the author provides comfort to readers by quoting a serene passage. Allow me to share it with you as well. May you possess the serenity to accept the things you cannot change, the courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Alright, today's book interpretation ends here. Congratulations, you've completed another book. Thank you for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel. Like and share with your family and friends, wisdom deserves to be spread. Open the door to a brighter future. Thank you, goodbye.